Hello and welcome to the UNOMi 2D animation lip sync software guide. This is just going to be a quick little demo to show you how to use the UNOMi software, including how to import mouth poses, audio, text, how to sync and render your lip synced animation, and just how to get a feel of the UI, understand where everything is, and how it's all organized. So to start with, I am just going to open up our software, which is going to open up a dialog prompt box where you can sign in with your account details, your UNOMi account details, and that will just register whether you have the free trial, the monthly or annual subscription, and give you all of the software access that you've signed up for. Once you sign in, what you're going to see is another dialog prompt, just asking if you want to create a new project or open an existing project. For the sake of this demo, we're going to create a new project. But I'm also going to show you just how the software functions when you open an existing project a little bit later. So I'm just going to title this project demo, and I'm going to hit create. Alright, so what we're looking at may be a bit daunting at first, but it's actually really easy to use. Over here on our top left, we have our asset library. We have our downloaded poses or our mouse shapes. And we have our composition, which we can preview on the top right here. This is our composition window. We can make that smaller or bigger as we please. We can also bring the timeline up or move it down. Now this is our pose window. We're going to see all of our downloaded or imported poses here. These little mouth cards will be what the system references when it's doing its lip syncing magic. We also have a little preview screen here. Once we've downloaded mouth poses or stills for the animation, we'll be able to preview them just in this window. I'll switch back to our mouth pose cards. This is our composition window. Can also zoom in, pan, although it's a bit hard to see if I don't have anything on. You can change the color of your background here. And if you like, you're also able to export using this colored background. However, I'm just going to keep that at white for now. Down at the bottom, we have our timeline, our groups, and I'm going to rename this group Character 1. And within this group, we have our audio layer and our script layer. We also have in the timeline section, our render queue. And I'll touch on this a little bit later. And I'll also explain these buttons as we get to that step. Now let's start on our lip synced animation. So there are a few ways to import our mouse shapes and the still we'll be animating on top of. I'm going to show you a couple of those different methods as we go. So first I want to import a still, which I'll be animating my lip sync on top of. So I can hit File, Import Files, or Control-I, which will open up my file explorer. I'll select my still, and that's now imported in my asset library. And I can preview that just up here. So there's a transparent background on this, and I'm going to drag it into my composition window. In your composition window, you can select your image, and you can change the size of that one, scale it up, scale it down, rotate it, and you can also hit Ctrl-Z to undo. And if you right mouse click, you have the undo and redo options, move to top or move to bottom options, so you can change the arrangement of your images. You can hide, reset, or delete your image as well. Now that my still's in place, I'm going to shift back to the pose window. So these pose cards are what the software references when it's creating the lip synced animation. One way I can import those mouth poses is I can select File, Import Files, select all of my mouth poses, and import them into my asset library. But that doesn't put them into the mouth pose or phenome cards that we have here, which the system will be referencing. I can drag and drop each individual mouth pose. However, this takes a little bit more time than we might want during the process of animating. So I'm just going to remove that and show you another way that you can import those mouth poses. I'm going to open my File Explorer, open my mouth poses or shapes or phenomes, whichever you prefer. What you might notice is that I have used a particular naming convention, and this is specifically so that I can import these mouth shapes in the correct order within the software. There are 14 mouth pose cards, and each mouth pose that I'm importing will have a corresponding number to which mouth pose card it belongs to. So O will be the first card. I've named it 1. AEI is the second card. I've named it 2. E will be the third card, and I've named it 3. I also added the sounds just so I can keep track of what I'm doing, but as long as I have the number as a priority within the naming convention, the system will understand exactly where I'm putting what. So I'm going to select all of those and drag and drop them into our mouth pose window. Because I've used the naming convention I have, the software will recognize exactly where I want to put each mouth pose, 1, 2, 3, and it will import them all correctly. My asset library has also reflected that I've imported these mouth poses, and I can reference them or drag them in anytime I need. Now I'll select poses again, and I'm going to edit the size of this mouth pose so it's sitting correctly on top of my character. Once you're happy with where the mouth pose is sitting, jump into your timeline, and this is where we're going to start creating the actual lip-synced animation. So we're going to jump to our audio layer, and I'm going to jump into my File Explorer again, and the software is able to import both MP3 and WAV files. I'm just going to use MP3 files for the sake of this demo though. Drag and drop that into our audio layer. I'm also going to import a script that the software is able to read off of to make sure that it's using the right sounds. What I do now is I hit sync. This is the actual process of the software animating the lip sync. And that little sound lets us know that it's done. So what do you think of it? Is it good or bad? Amazing. Another great feature of this software is that we're actually able to adjust or change or add keyframes once the software's created the lip synced animation. I can't quite see the keyframes from here. Down on the bottom right, there's actually a feature where we can zoom in a little bit on our timeline. As I scroll through, you'll see in our composition window, the mouth pose is changing. I'll quickly show you how we can adjust these keyframes, but I'm really happy with how the software's interpreted the audio. If I hover over each of these little keyframes, I can see exactly which mouth shape it's chosen to interpret. Up in the top left of this little white box, you can see it's interpreted the 5th mouth shape, 6th, 2nd, 5th. And in the top right of this little white box, you can see the mouth shape name. So for example, the 7th mouth shape here reflects a V sound. I'm happy with where all these are, but you can move them by hovering over each keyframe, selecting with your left mouse button, and just dragging them where you like on the timeline. If you think it needs to be a little bit earlier or a bit later, you can do so there. You can also select this keyframe and right mouse click to delete it. Now say if you're happy with the adjustments you've made to your keyframes and your animation, what you can do is start to render out your work. Now to do that, what we do is we jump up here, we hit Q, which will add our animation to the render queue. This jumps us to the render queue tab, and we can swap between our timeline and our render queue as we like by just selecting between them. In our render queue, we have a few options. We can adjust the render settings, output settings, and we can also duplicate our render. We can do that by hitting this button. However, I only want one render, so I'm just going to delete that. We can also choose to export our animation without sound, which is useful if you just want to export the animation and do all of your post-production at once, including adding sounds a little bit later. But for the sake of this demo, I want to keep the sound in. Currently, our composition is named Composition 1 and it will export with that name, but I can change that by going to Output Settings. However, first I'll show you the render settings. I'll click on that, and here you can see we can adjust our resolution, our frames per second, our constant quality factor, and our speed preset. I'm happy with all of these settings, and now let's have a look at our output settings. If I want to rename my render, I just jump in here, delete the existing name, and change that there. I'm happy with the format being a movie format. We can also change the path where our render is going to export to. I'll click this button. That will open our file explorer, and I'll click this folder. I explained briefly that we could adjust the background color of our animation, and if I wanted to export with the background color I selected, I would deselect the transparent background button here. However, I want to export with a transparent background for the sake of compositing within my film a little bit later, so I'm going to hit transparent background on. Hit OK. The name's been changed, our render settings and our path have been adjusted, and now all I have to do is hit render. And that's the magic sound. With that, you have just learnt how to use the UNOMi 2D lip sync animation software to create your own lip synced animation. You hopefully know your way around the interface now, and you'll be able to create your own project in no time.